Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Fast Track Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and today I'm going to talk about how do you actually buy a house step by step. This was a request from one of our listeners, so I want to make sure I make the content that is custom to people's interests. So before I get into that topic today on this week's REI Weekly Lesson, if you're not familiar with me, my name is Greg Helbeck. I've been a full-time real estate investor now for over 8 years. I've done well over 200 houses. Got a relatively decent sized business back on the East Coast. And all the information on this show and any show I put out is from the real world. This is not regurgitated theory from a book. So if you do get value from this podcast, if you can do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening on an audio platform, you can share the show with somebody. That's how we keep growing this thing. It would really mean a lot to me. So how do you buy a house, right? What is the process? This is something that people get overwhelmed on. And it could be a new investor. It could be a new homeowner. It could be anybody who's interested in buying a house. Because when you do it a few times, it's really simple. But if you've never done it before, I understand why people get overwhelmed and they get anxiety from even the thought of buying a house. So I'm going to give you the general overview on how to do it. Every state is going to be a little bit different. There are some states that are attorney states, which means attorneys close the deal. Other states are title states, which means a title company closes the deal. So I'm going to give you the general outline. And hopefully after listening to this, you're going to have much more insight on how to do that exact process. So step number one, I'm going to start with a quote I heard from my friend Eric Brewer, is you got to make an offer. And Eric says famously, I've never bought a house I didn't make an offer on. If you make the offer and it gets accepted, then you would go into the actual process of buying the house. And in this case, you would sign a contract either directly with the seller, if it's a title company state, or if you're in like New York, for example, it's an attorney state. So you'd have the attorney prepare the contract and then you'd sign it. So step number one is you sign a contract. Step number two, and when I say you, I mean you and the seller. So the two parties who are buying and selling would sign a contract that's either prepared from the buyer, the real estate agent, or the attorney, depending on the situation. If it's an MLS property, if it's a retail deal, the real estate agent's going to send you a contract to sign. And if it's an off-market deal and you're in a title company state, you would just sign that directly with the seller. If it's in an attorney state like New York, you're going to have the attorney prepare the contract that the buyer and seller would sign. So once you do that, you're going to then open up title, in this case, or escrow in California, which is basically the process where you send the completed contract to either the attorney or the title company or the escrow company in California. And then at that point, you would run a title search. And a title search is a very simple thing. It's just basically the title company's way of making sure that the owner who's selling the property is the actual owner and they're legally able to sell the house. And when you get a title search back, if there's any quote unquote title issues, you have to work the title issues out, right? So the title company will let you know what needs to happen in order to get clean title. And then once title's back, then you can prepare the closing, right? Now, there's a lot of different things that can happen depending on how you're paying for the property. So let's just say you're doing a cash deal. If you're doing a cash deal, literally when title is back, you send the title company, the attorney, the money to close. They prepare the closing statement and the house gets sold. It's literally that simple. You'll wire the money or bring in a check. The attorney takes the check or the wire. They give the proceeds to the seller. You get the deed. The seller sells the house. They get their money. And now all of a sudden it's yours, right? However, if you're doing this and you're getting a mortgage, whether it's a conventional mortgage or a hard money loan or even a private lender, you need to reach out to that lender. You have to go through their guidelines. If it's a bank, for example, they're going to ask for your financial information. They're going to get an appraisal done on the house, which costs like $600. If you're a homeowner, you're going to get a home inspection done. So you're going to get the home inspector to go through the house and basically pick apart any items that could be a concern. And then you're going to want to have the seller fix that or get a credit for that, depending on how bad the situation is. Like I said earlier, you're going to get the appraisal done. If you're getting a bank loan, the house needs to appraise for the purchase price or else you're going to have to come out of pocket the difference. But anyway, you're going to get the lender involved if you're not paying cash. The lender's going to give you some things you're going to have to complete. And once you have quote unquote clear to close, that's what we call it in New York. At that point, the lender's committed to giving you the money. All the documents are going to have to get signed between you and the lender. And generally what it's going to be in terms of getting a loan is there's two things that are going to get signed. You're either going to get a mortgage or a deed of trust signed, which depends on the state. And all that is, it's basically the collateral to the property, which means if you default on that loan you're going to get, the lender has the ability to take the property back and then you don't get the property. They get the property, they can sell it and still sue you for damages. But the first thing you're going to sign is either the mortgage or the deed of trust, depending on your state. And then the second thing you're going to sign, this is the typical like IOU. It's called a note. A note is simply a document that says party one owes party two this dollar amount. They're going to get paid back in this timeline. This is the interest rate and these are the payments. So you're going to sign just the two documents and then either the mortgage or the deed of trust. Once that gets signed, signed, this all would happen at closing or before closing. At that point, the lender, when they have all their documents signed, they're going to wire the money to the title company. The attorney is going to take that, or the title company is going to take that. They're going to give that money to the seller, and then you're going to get the deed. And then all of a sudden you're the owner. So at the end of the day, buying a house, despite it being overwhelming for new people, is actually very simple. It's a simple process. And I'll make the summary again. Number one, you get an offer accepted. Number two, you sign a contract. Number three, you get a title search. Number four, you clear up any title issues if there's title issues on the property. Number five, you get your financing in place, or you send the money to the attorney if you're cash. And then number six is you simply close, and then the money changes hands, the deed changes hands. So that's the thing too. When you send the money to the attorney or the title company, they're going to give you the deed, because in this case, you want the property via a deed. And then the seller obviously wants money because they're selling something. They're going to get the money. It's a simple exchange, a deed for a dollar. Remember that, deed for a dollar, right? Obviously, I could talk about this for an hour. I'm an investor. A lot of people listening to this podcast are investors. So this process becomes like you almost get desensitized to it because it's just so straightforward and you've done it so many times. The only thing with investors that really happens is when you get these properties under contract, there's title issues a lot of the time because you're getting it at a discount, usually for that reason, which takes time to fix. I have a handful of properties right now with title issues that we're working on. But if you're listening to this and you're a consumer and you're buying a house with a mortgage, it's not as overwhelming as you might think. Literally, if you get a good attorney or you have a good title company and a good real estate agent, they'll walk you through this entire process, but they're going to say the same thing I said. One more thing I'll mention and then I'll end this video. Anytime you're buying a property, unless you're going to rent it out to tenants, you're going to have to get the utilities in your name. So you always want to do this either the day of or the day before closing. So you're going to get the power in your name, you're going to get the sewer in your name if it's on sewer, you're going to get the water in your name, and you just transfer the service from the old owner to you being the new owner, right? Now, if you have a septic tank, which I've made a video on, the septic is there, there's no transferring or anything like that. It's literally on its own property. Same thing if there's a well. If there's a well, you don't have to do anything. The well's already there. So that's the process. Nothing crazy. When you do it once or twice, I would say, you really start to get used to it. I'm going to just share this story here as an example. The first time I bought a property, I was a little overwhelmed. And I'm not saying wholesale. The first time I actually bought a property. So first real property I bought without a partner was actually in New York. I got a hard money lender to give me a loan for like $160,000 or something like that. I had to personally guarantee it. I was pretty overwhelmed, but I ended up making $100,000 on that property. So it ended up working out. But at the end of the day, did that once. And then the next deal was even easier. And then 200 houses later, it becomes like second nature. But that's the process on buying a house. I hope this was a helpful video for new people. And if you're experienced and you listen to this, I hope this was a good reminder on how simple it really is to do this business. So if you did get value, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video. If you're listening on audio platform, share it with people. It would really mean a lot to me. And if you're local to the Hudson Valley, Reno, Delaware, or San Diego, and you have a house you either want to wholesale to me or you want to wholesale with me, I'll buy it or I'll wholesale it with you. My email is greg@velocityhousebuyers.com and my Instagram handle is @grego37. I hope you got value from this and I will see you on the next weekly lesson. Take care.